All right, let's dive right into this explainer. For decades, we've basically been taught to view our organizations as these rigid, predictable machines. Engines that just need to be optimized, measured, and tightly controlled. Well, today we are going to completely dismantle that idea. We're looking at source material that argues we absolutely must shift our perspective. We need to stop seeing mechanical structures and start seeing our workplaces for what they really are: living, breathing, complex, adaptive ecosystems.
Now, this is a question that really gets at that invisible strain, that cognitive overload we are all feeling at work these days. I mean, you've probably lived through this, right? Your company restructures, some massive new policy is rolled out, and the org chart looks absolutely flawless on paper. And yet, everything on the ground still feels incredibly misaligned and chaotic. Decisions are flying at us faster than we can even process them. So, what's actually going on here? I just love how this quote captures it, that deep sense of discordance. The source material makes a really compelling point here. Those old linear models, the ones that rely on more rules, steeper hierarchies, and centralized control, they are fundamentally failing us in today's fast-moving network age. It used to be that you could contain consequences within a rigid structure, but today, a single pricing update or supply chain hiccup ripples across a global network in real time. The old machine model is completely broken because you simply cannot command and control a highly interconnected system. We have to understand the ecosystem underneath it all.
Section 1, the living ecosystem and its three inseparable dimensions.
Okay, so to truly grasp this, we have to view every organization as a complex system made up of three dimensions that happen simultaneously. You literally cannot separate them. The first is the mechanics of structure. Think of structure as the actual anatomy of your organization. It's what exists. We're talking about your business architecture, your governance, organizational design, decision rights, policies, standards, even your taxonomies and technology architecture. It's the architecture of possibility. It establishes the conditions that make coordinated action possible. But here is the kicker. It does not create value by itself.
And this is a massive trap that so many leaders fall into. An org chart, a fancy process architecture, or a thick policy manual, it's just a skeleton. Sure, it establishes the necessary conditions, but it doesn't actually do anything on its own. A skeleton can't move without muscles, right? So no matter how perfectly designed your structure is, it remains entirely static until we bring in the second dimension.
Enter the mechanics of movement. If structure is the anatomy, movement is the circulatory system. This is how work actually happens on the ground. We're looking at operational processes, workflows, value streams, decision flows, information flows, and resource allocation. If your team is using BPM, BPMN, Lean, Six Sigma, or running supply chain operations and ERP execution, all of that lives right here in the domain of movement. This is the dimension that actually transforms your structural potential into real operational performance.
Now, what's absolutely crucial to take away here is how deeply intertwined these two dimensions are. Structure enables movement, absolutely. But movement reveals the hidden reality of your structure. It's like a stress test. If your organizational structure is rigid or outdated, the actual movement of work is going to be incredibly painful. It exposes exactly where the system is misaligned. That's when you start seeing the bottlenecks, the employee burnout, and the endless workarounds. Which brings us to the third dimension, the dynamics of evolution. This describes how both your structure and your movement continuously change over time. This isn't just a buzzword. It includes your strategy, organizational learning, innovation, experimentation, continuous improvement, and capability development. Evolution is how your organization adapts to changing internal and external conditions. It's how the system retains memory, learns from its environment, and continuously reshapes itself. If you don't have this continuous evolution, what happens? Your structure hardens and your movement stalls. The whole organization becomes brittle. Evolution is quite literally what keeps the organization alive. Every single organizational phenomenon you experience can be understood as the interaction of these three things: structure, movement, and evolution.
Section 2, putting it into practice with integrated business planning.
So let's take these concepts out of the clouds and look at a practical example like integrated business planning, or IBP. When we map this out, it makes total sense. Look at the mechanics of structure. In an IBP context, this is your master data, your planning hierarchy, governance model, and decision rights. Then the mechanics of movement. That's your recurring planning cycles, demand and supply reviews, scenario planning, and executive execution. Finally, the dynamics of evolution.
This is where you're continuously refining your forecasts, updating planning assumptions and KPIs, or integrating AI-enabled planning. A mature IBP capability is so powerful because it operates across all three dimensions, allowing the organization to reorganize effectively as the market changes.
Section 3, the litmus test. Applying this to business process management. We can apply this exact same lens to business process management. So often, companies treat BPM as just documenting steps on a static flowchart. But true BPM requires evaluating the whole living system. You should be putting every process through a 3-question litmus test. First, does the organizational structure actually enable this process? Second, does work move effectively through the organization to execute it? And third, does the process continuously evolve based on learning and environmental changes? So, you see, true process excellence isn't just about making things go faster. If you try to optimize movement alone, say, making people work faster inside a fundamentally broken structure, you are just going to cause systemic failure and massive burnout. Real excellence is the integration of all 3 dimensions. You have to treat your processes as a living, adaptable system rather than just an engine to be revved up. Section 4. The emergent climax. Cultivating true adaptive capacity. This brings us to the ultimate goal for any modern business facing an unpredictable world. But we need to clear up a huge misconception here. People constantly think adaptive capacity is some magical 4th dimension. They treat it like a new metric to track, or they just build a separate innovation department and bolt it onto the side of their company. That doesn't work. Adaptive capacity is an emergent property. It arises naturally only from the coherence and integration of structure, movement, and evolution. You can't just buy adaptability. You have to cultivate the conditions for it to emerge. Sustainable performance and resilience don't come from optimizing one dimension in a vacuum. It's exactly as the source material points out. Organizations become adaptive when they maintain alignment among these dimensions while responding to uncertainty. When your structure properly channels your movement and your movement feeds real-world learning back into your evolution, the organization inherently becomes adaptive. It just happens naturally. So how do leaders actually cultivate this coherence? Well, you have to maintain structural integrity. This means actively sustaining informative feedback loops so your system actually senses reality. It also means preserving internal variation and slack. This is a big one. If you optimize away all the breathing room in the name of efficiency, you destroy your ability to adapt to surprises. Ultimately, you have to ensure your structure channels action rather than suppressing it. The central takeaway is this. If you stop treating your company like a failing machine and start stewarding it like a living ecosystem, you unlock an entirely new level of resilience. I want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on after this explainer. Look around your workplace tomorrow and really ask yourself, is your organization acting like a machine to be optimized or a living system ready to evolve? Thanks for joining me. I'll catch you next time.